The WSOP has always been an institution that evolves alongside the game it represents. As the 57th edition of the series prepares to kick off on May 26th, the WSOP has introduced a set of meaningful rule changes aimed at addressing long-standing controversies, improving the pace of play, and tightening the integrity of its tournaments. Perhaps the most consequential and widely discussed rule change for 2026 stems directly from one of the most embarrassing moments in recent WSOP history, the 2025 Millionaire Maker scandal. In that incident, two players competing in the heads-up portion of the Millionaire Maker event allegedly conspired with each other in order to claim a $1 million bonus prize being offered by third-party poker platform Club WPT Gold. Rather than competing purely for the WSOP prize, these players were playing, at least in part, to satisfy the condition of an outside promotion, effectively distorting the integrity of the tournament's conclusion.
I think the real culprit here is WPT Club Gold. They know exactly what they were doing, and they could predict what would happen if they created this giant wave of money that would be affecting the outcome of final tables at the World Series of Poker. Furthermore, when they saw what had happened, they doubled down. They added more Gold Rush passes, and they are paying the $1 million to the theoretical winner, Yaga Numa. It is one thing for companies to compete with each other. If they want to compete for turf, if they want to compete for the best schedules for their poker tournament series, that's fine. But this is industrial sabotage, if you will.
In direct response to this, the World Series of Poker introduced Rule 40E for 2026, which grants host properties broad authority to penalize any participant whose behavior is deemed inconsistent with WSOP official tournament rules or the best interest of the WSOP tournament. The rule explicitly targets the scenario of a player accepting payment or prizes from third-party entries based on the outcome of a WSOP event. If found in violation, a player stands to forfeit all WSOP prize money earned from the event in question, and if the money has already been paid out, the host property reserves the right to recover it in full with interest. The penalties are severe enough that players will almost certainly think twice before agreeing to arrangements like the Club WPT Gold promotion, even if low-key wagers between friends continue under the radar. The second significant rule change addresses an angle that some savvy tournament players had been exploiting around the registration process. Under the previous rule, players could register for a tournament before it began and then choose to delay actually claiming their seat and chip stack. This allowed a registered player to wait and observe the early stages of the tournament before finally sitting down and collecting their chips. In effect, it was a form of informational advantage gained without any risk, since the player had not yet put chips in play. The revised rule number 35 closes this loophole decisively. Under the new policy, any player who registers before a tournament begins will have their chip stack automatically put in play and blinded off from the moment the event starts. You can no longer register and then hover in the background waiting for an opportune moment to show up. Additionally, refunds become essentially unavailable once the tournament is underway, which adds further pressure on players to make a definitive commitment when registering. While some worry that this might inadvertently incentivize more late registration, it ultimately makes the flow of tournaments cleaner and prevents a form of soft angling that gave certain players an unfair informational edge. The third major rule targets one of the most universally frustrating aspects of tournament poker, which is deliberately stalling near the money bubble and at pay jump thresholds. Every experienced tournament player is familiar with the phenomenon. As the field approaches a new pay jump, certain players begin taking an unusually long time on every decision, not because the hand is complicated, but because they are trying to survive long enough to outlast another elimination. The tactics range from excessive tanking to deliberately running out of time bank tokens or trivial decisions in order to buy more real-world minutes.
Clock me whenever you feel it's appropriate. We're on a pay jump, and this is how it works.
High-stakes player who plays buy-ins of 250,000 or something, puts like 99% of his chips in pre-flop. Another player goes on, so he's one chip left, right? So in this case, there is no decision to be made. So the only reason to take any time whatsoever is to stall/steal for a pay jump. Just because you say, oh guys, by the way, I'm gonna stall for a pay jump. That's not the hero move it looks like. Because now the entire table's incentivized to go, you know what? This is good for us. Let him stall. Let him stall all the time. Everybody else goes broke. Hey, we're in the money.
The updated rule number 80 specifically addresses this kind of intentional delay. Under the new provisions, any player suspected of purposefully stalling to ladder up in the payout structure can be placed on clock for all decisions, not just the one hand where the behavior was noticed. New players who abuse the clock calling mechanism itself can now be subjected to a reduced clock or outright penalties. The rule also explicitly references purposefully depleting time banks to ladder up in the payout as a prohibited behavior, which is a direct and specific acknowledgement of a modern tournament abuse that has flourished in the absence of clear language against it. While it remains to be seen how consistently floor staff will enforce the spirit of this rule, its introduction makes an important step toward a culture where stalling is treated as a penalizable offense rather than an accepted, if annoying, tournament tactic. Rule number 52 represents the WSOP drawing a much firmer line around the commercialization of its broadcast product. While the 2025 version of this rule primarily required players to sign a participant release, the 2026 revision goes considerably further. Any player who intends to display sponsor logos, patches, or promotional language while seated at a feature table must now submit full sponsor details to the WSOP at least 24 hours before it's shown on camera. This transforms what was once a passive acknowledgement into an active pre-approval process with real teeth. A player who does not receive written clearance may be prohibited from displaying the logo at all. More significantly, failure to go throughout the consent process opens the door to immediate disqualification and the forfeiture of both entry fee and prize money. The WSOP is making unmistakably clear that it views broadcast content as its own asset and that external commercial interests must be negotiated, not assumed. Lastly, rule number 54 builds directly on the framework established by rule number 52 and brings its own structural tightening to the way sponsored players appear on televised coverage. Under the 2025 rule, up to 3 players affiliated with the same entity could appear simultaneously at a televised final or featured table. The 2026 revision reduces that ceiling to 2 players for any live stream or televised coverage. All apparel decisions for those players must now be handled through the rule number 52 approval process, meaning that the pre-clearance requirements extends to everything worn or displayed at a featured table, not just traditional logo patches. These 5 rule changes do not exist in isolation. They are part of a broader effort by the WSOP in 2026 to modernize and professionalize the world's most prestigious poker series. The 2026 World Series of Poker is also introducing a new dealer rating system on the WSOP Live app, allowing players to provide feedback on dealer performance, a move aimed at improving training and quality control across 749 total tables. The series is also introducing free live streaming on YouTube for every bracelet event, ending the PokerGo paywall and dramatically expanding the global audience. The WSOP main event final table is returning to ESPN platforms, and a brand new broadcast setup in the Paris Ballroom is expected to impress both players and viewers. The rule changes fit naturally into the larger vision. The WSOP in 2026 wants to be taken seriously as a fair competition, as a global broadcast product, and as an institution that responds to controversy with clear-eyed, practical reform rather than inaction. None of these changes will be without complications in practice, but the intent behind all these 5 is sound, and the direction they represent is exactly what the world's most storied poker tournament should be striving for as it enters its 57th year.